Is it chargeable? Non-chargeable? Is it an expense? How do you make sure you get paid for the work you do and that you can explain the hours you weren't working with a client? Like that time you spent sitting in an office meeting or going through on-the-job training. If you go on a work-related trip, how do you make sure you get paid for the mileage or the night you spent at a hotel to finish up that audit work you did with your client? It's simple. You use work codes. This is the work code screen in TPS Cloud Axis, and yours should look similar to this if you use the conversion process in TPS when setting it up. If you haven't done that, you can come over here to Tools, find where it says Import, and go to Import Work Codes, and there's a video in here that shows you exactly how to do that. But let's go ahead and focus on the work codes screen right now. Similar to any kind of Windows filing system or even Mac filing system, you have your main type folder, then you may have some subtypes, all the way down to your actual work codes. Here on this screen, you have some options up top. You can collapse all, expand all, or add a new work code. So now that I've clicked that button to add a new one, when setting up a new work code, you can see the fields you have to fill out here. There's something I need to explain to you first though. When you clicked that plus sign to create a new work code, the system automatically thinks you're creating a parent folder, a type folder. That's why if you click here in the drop-down menu, you only have the option for none. So if you are in fact creating a new type folder, then go ahead and proceed. However, let's say you just want to create a new work code under this audit type folder because it's the actual work codes that you choose in the time entry screen. Don't worry, I'll explain more about that later. But if you're trying to create a work code under the audit folder, you need to first, let's close out of here, first click on that main folder, and you'll see that it opens up with all the information for that folder. But let's close that. And now the system knows that you've clicked on a folder, so when you click the plus sign, it now assigns that folder as the parent folder, and that's what we want right now. If we click the drop down, you'll see all the other folders as options for parent folders. We want it to be audit though. Next you have the work code. So the number, like you see over here where it says 301, 302, 303. Up here in audit we have 101, 102, all the way to 106. So if we're creating a new work code, let's go ahead and follow this in sequence to keep it all nicely organized, and we'll say 107. And for the name, let's call it Post Audit Follow-Up. All right, down here in type, you can see that we have a drop down. There's chargeable, non-chargeable, or expense. So chargeable just means you can actually charge it to a client. Non-chargeable, these would be used to explain hours in your day you're not actually doing work for a client. So maybe you'd create a non-chargeable work code for team meetings, training seminars, etc. Or an expense, which is also chargeable but just calculated differently. We'll go over that a little more in a minute too. I want to keep this as chargeable. Hierarchy, the system automatically, because we'd clicked on a parent folder, assumes that we're creating a subtype folder. So if you want to keep this as a subtype folder, you can leave it alone. I want to actually make it a work code, one that I can choose on the time entry screen and charge to my client. Description. These descriptions can be used later in billing as options for your billing paragraphs on the invoice, so the wording or the paragraphs on the invoice. So you might want to input a short description of the work to be done using this work code. Think about wording it how you'd like it to appear on an invoice. That way it makes less work for you later. I put in the description, time spent with client discussing results of their audit and changes going forward. Next, you need to choose which tax applies to this. Those taxes are set up in firm properties, so this is just deciding which tax applies to this work code. Then we come down to rate level. This goes along with the rates you've set up for your employees. So if you set this work code as the easiest work, let's say a level 1, and employee Johnny charges $80 an hour for level 1 work, that's how that is calculated when he chooses this work code in the time entry screen. Employees and the rates they charge is explained on the employees screen when you click edit and you come to the rates tab in the employee properties. You'll see a video here that explains the rates. Unit is where you decide whether this is just a regular chargeable work code, as in charged by time or hours, or if this is an expense work code, you would have to choose something else, like mileage or copies for charging clients for how many copies of their paperwork you had to make, or maybe courier fees. With both of these, you'll see the options to add an option to that menu edit what's already there, or delete an option altogether. Here you'll see you have the ability to make a work code inactive. So if you're no longer using that one, so you don't want people to choose it going forward, you can make it inactive. Then of course, just make sure you click save. So even if we've saved our work code, you can see it came here, 107, the one we just created. We can open it up just by clicking on it, make any changes we need to, save it. If we want to get rid of it, we can delete it. Just keep in mind the system will not let you delete a work code that has been used on lines of time in the time entry screen, or WIP, work in progress. If you decide you want to get rid of a work code and have everything tied to it move to a different work code, you'll need to use this transfer button. When you click on that, it will ask you what the destination work code is, so which one are you wanting to switch everything to. That makes sure that all transactions with that work code would then change to the other in the system. Then you would just click transfer work code to make it happen. Now, once you've set up your work codes, you're able to use them over on the time entry screen. I'm just going to go ahead and click to enter a new time. I'll choose a client and come over here just so I can show you the work code drop down. And as you can see, you have the work code numbers, the name, and whether it's chargeable, non-chargeable, or an expense. And I think that covers your work codes quick overview. Thank you for watching.